The Gotthard region is a crossroads of watersheds. Here, Switzerland's most important river embarks on its journey towards the North Sea. Many Swiss rivers often flow through a lake. The Rhine and Lake Constance, locally known as Bodensee, are no exception. A scheduled ferry service links Romanshorn with Friedrichshafen in Germany. The Bodensee ranks third in the largest lakes of Europe. Its banks are shared by Switzerland, Austria and Germany. Neutral Switzerland escaped the ravages of 2 world wars. As a result, many towns have preserved their medieval centers, as seen here in Stein am Rhein. The Swiss sense of tradition also made a contribution. The Rhine produces the largest waterfall in Europe. Over a width of 500 feet, some 154,000 gallons of water per second cascades 75 feet down. Just before the border with France and Germany, the river splits the city of Basel, hub of commerce and industry, and main port along the Rhine. Basel is also the border station for railways and road traffic. 7 bridges, the first dating from 1225, span the river between Greater Basel on the left bank and Little Basel on the right. The Rhine, as an industrial artery of transport, begins further upstream at Rheinfelden. Greater Basel contains the historic city centre, which is dominated by the Minster. Its Roman origins can be traced to the year 1019, but it was rebuilt in Gothic style following the earthquake of 1356. Swiss towns are modest size-wise. Their architecture reflects the inevitable influence of various styles from abroad, as seen here in St. Gallen. Classicism. Gothic. And the Baroque of the Basilica. Bern was founded in 1191 on an isthmus on the River Aire. Exactly a century later, the cantons of Uri, Unterweiden and Schwyz laid the foundation of the present Swiss Federation. The city centre has been on the World Heritage List since 1983. This also includes the St. Vincent Cathedral, the construction of which took more than 80 years, starting in 1421. This fine example of late Gothic style was being restored during our filming. No less than 10 Swiss objects were listed as World Heritage in 2010, and we shall see more of them later. Bern and bears have coexisted since 1513. Bears even feature on Bern's coat of arms. This pit from 1857, now vacated and retained as a monument, served as their home until a new park became available in 2009. Bern is the political centre and seat of Swiss government. The House of Parliament can be admired in model form at Swiss Miniature in Melide, near Lugano. This park also contains another medieval icon of the Bernese city, the clock tower, or Zeitglockenturm. The first train in Switzerland ran between Zurich and Baden. The present station dates from 1871 and terminates at the Bahnhofstrasse, Zurich's most upmarket shopping street. The city centre is draped around the banks of the river Limmat, fed by excess water from the Lake Zurich. The most monumental buildings are found here, like the town hall and the 12th century Grossmünster. This minster was the nucleus during the 16th century Reformation, from which a lot of trouble ensued. Switzerland was plagued by several civil wars up to the time of Napoleon Bonaparte. A curiosity from the 19th century is located next to the yacht buildings. Up to this day, the Frauenbad is a ladies-only bathing facility. Concluding our little tour of cities is Luzern, idyllically situated around the banks of Lake Lucerne and the River Reuss. Luzern's most iconic structure is the Chapel Bridge and Water Tower. Completed in 1333 to connect the old city with the no longer very new city, the possibly oldest covered wooden bridge in the world was struck by fire in 1993. The extensive structural damage was repaired by the spring of 1994, but the paintings on the roof trusses have taken years. Another point of interest is hewn into a rock face. The Lion Monument, or Löwendenkmal, commemorates the Swiss mercenaries fallen during the French Revolution. This region is the birth of tourism in Switzerland. Many attractions confirm this, like the nostalgic paddle boat. Tourism soared in the 19th century with every traffic improvement. The Verkehrshaus contains many exhibits which made their contribution, like the famous crocodile locomotive of the Gotthard Railway, or the rotary snowplow that kept the line open. The motoring hall is easily recognized by facades covered in road signs. They belong to the motorway. An interactive exhibit inside allows visitors to choose any vehicle from 1860 onwards and have it brought to the limelight by the robot elevator. We are now crossing Lake Luzern to Witznau. It is where the Rigi Bahn starts. Europe's old rack railway opened back in 1871, and only one exceeds it in age worldwide. The success of the Mount Washington Cog Railway in America facilitated Nikolaus Riggenbach's effort to convince local authorities in Switzerland. The success of the Witznau Rigi Bahn didn't pass unnoticed on the other side of the mountain. 4 years later, another Rigi Bahn opened, starting in Athgoldo, both lines parallel to each other towards the 5,900-foot summit at Rigi Kulm, red from Witznau, blue from Athgoldo. These views explain why rack railways enjoy a lasting popularity. Looking westwards down on Luzern, Mount Pilatus, known as Pilatus, is on the left. The Pilatus, Luzern's private mountain, was made accessible by rack railway in 1889. When boarding, its steepness becomes immediately apparent. Just 18 years have passed since the Rigi Bahn opened, and engineers already dared to make the Pilatus Railway more than twice as steep. This still stands as a world record, but one that requires a special design of rack. A quick wave to the opposing train and the driver turns on the handbrake before lining up his road. A special rack also requires a special switch, which is easily set in a swift move. On the way up, the green vegetation makes way for ever more rock. The steepest section is almost effortlessly climbed on electricity. In comparison, the steam cars slugged their way up. This pace made the steam cars victim of their own success, as they could no longer cope with demand. One has been preserved and is now on static display at the Verkehrshaus. The nearly 7,000 feet Pilatus is the highest peak on the Alpine foothills. An old legend circulating in Luzern bestowed the mountain its name. In that legend, the frequently bad weather was attributed to the spirit of Pontius Pilate lingering around its slopes. Visitors remained undeterred, arriving in great numbers, amongst which prominent people like composer Richard Wagner and Queen Victoria. Given some fair weather, the views of the peaks are breathtaking, and the trails invite to a walk at the highest level. Looking westwards, we head towards another popular mountain. Coming from Brig, one had to find a means of transport in order to board the Visp-Zermatt-Bahn. The gap had long since been closed by rail. When traveling by car, please keep in mind that Zermatt has banned all road traffic. The Zermatt station is still exposed to hostile elements, but is now fully covered for protection. Zermatt's claim to fame is all about the Matterhorn. The iconic giant already looms in sight down here, but of course it can be seen much better from the Gornergrat Bahn. The Gornergrat rack line opened in 1898, and for a number of years, it held the record for the highest terminus at 10,134 feet. In contrast to the even higher Jungfrau Bahn, the 14,692 feet Matterhorn remains in sight most of the time. These fields are snow-covered through most of the year, to the joy of winter sport fans. The Matterhorn is famous, but it is not the highest mountain. It ranks 7 amongst the tallest peaks in Switzerland. The Monte Rosa and Dufour-Spitz being the real champions, at both 15,203 feet above sea level. The ride ends near the observatory, looking down on the Gorner Glacier. From Zermatt, we follow the footsteps of the Glacier Express eastwards through the highest regions in the Alps, where most glaciers are to be found. An intermediate stop in Brig, a railway junction at the north entrance of the Simplon Tunnel. Brig is the capital town of German-speaking Wallis. Its major point of interest is the Stockalper Palace in Tuscan Renaissance style, constructed over a period of 20 years, starting in 1658. In 1981, a 9-mile tunnel replaced the old Furka Pass railway, which was broken up. This is how the Glacier Express used to climb the Furka, but only during the summer. The old Oberwald to Rialp track has been restored by volunteers. The line passes Glech, once at the foot of the Rhone Glacier. Today, it is a serious climb to walk on the glacier under expert guidance. The Grimsel Pass also ends up in Glech. Switzerland has no mineral deposits to speak of, but an abundance of hydroelectric power. Demand, however, rises, and with it, the height of the dams. This view is likely to change in the future. If only one image is to characterize a railway journey in Switzerland, the Landwasser Viaduct in the Albula line would be a fine choice. The railway age arrived late in Graubünden, but the builders have done such a splendid job that the entire line, viaducts and villages included, was adopted as a World Heritage in 2008. Typical of the local architecture are the broad houses with rendered facades containing windows placed seemingly at random. Bergün lies at the foot of the Albula Pass, which is closed in the winter. Fun is made out of an inconvenience by converting the road into a toboggan run from Prida to Bergün. The Rhätische Bahn joins the tradition by scheduling a special toboggan train to give runners a lift back to Prida. No sleigh? Not to worry. Prida has a rental outlet. The toboggan run is about 4 miles long and the railway almost 8, which means daredevils do have a chance. A British author once described this part of the Albula line as the efforts of some skillful model railway enthusiast with little space at his disposal, but anxious to include as many spirals, viaducts and tunnels as he could. The real reason is to provide a safe and workable gradient for trains. This sequence shows the same train twice to demonstrate the height it gains on a spiral in the mountain. Another World Heritage Site of an altogether different nature is found in East Graubünden, near the Italian border. The St. Johann Monastery in Muster is regarded as one of the finest of its kind, dating from the 8th century. In 1952, unique frescoes from a period between 800 and 1200 AD came to light behind the rendering on the walls. They contributed to awarding the monastery a place on UNESCO's list in 1983. Graubünden is home to famous winter sport places like Arosa, Davos, St. Moritz and Pontresina. The early tourists were mostly British. At 5,600 feet altitude in the Engadin region, the English touch lives on in traditions like the prestigious white turf tournament for horses on the frozen lake St. Moritz. In ski yawling, the participants have traded their sulkies for skies. The Engadiner Langlauf Marathon is held every year and is open to competitors as well as amateurs. A long-awaited dream finally came true for Sanglians and Eastern Graubünden when the 12-mile-long Verena Tunnel opened in 1999. A century earlier, the idea was to build a railway across the mountains, now traversed by the tunnel. It remained a pipe dream. Auto trains enjoy a popularity, especially during the winter months, as they save motorists a huge detour. A famous pass in southern Graubünden is the Bernina, connecting the Engadine with northern Italy. For centuries, goods were transported on beasts of burden, using so-called Salm trails, now enjoyed by mountain bikers. At 13,284 feet, Piz Bernina is the highest peak of eastern Switzerland. The Bernina group of mountains is embedded in a large area of glaciers, of which the Morteratsch is perfectly easy to reach, although today it is slightly further down. The north end of the Bernina Railway was initially conceived to carry tourists to the glaciers. Over time, the highest alpine railway crossing, cresting at 7,400 feet above sea level, became increasingly important to the region. This is particularly true for the Val Poschiavo, the last valley before the Italian border. Here, the influences from the southern neighbor are unmistakable. Curious rock formations are found only a few minutes' walk away from the Cavalier stop. The giant pots were formed by violently swirling meltwater mixed with stones. The train snakes between the houses of San Antonio as a result of limited funds during construction. The tramway-style street running is repeated in places further down the line. The descent would have been way too steep without the famous loop at Brusio. The Bernina Line 2 was added to the World Heritage List in 2008. The terminus is a Tirano, just beyond the Italian border. The most famous Swiss mountain pass is the Gotthard, linking Hospental with Airolo. This pass embodies the role of Switzerland in transit by rail and road alike. Bellinzona is the capital of the Italian-speaking canton of Ticino. The town's strategic location is reflected in the Castel Grande, the Castel di Sasso and Castello di Montebello, higher up the mountain. Ruling over Bellinzona meant control and revenue from the famous passes nearby, the Gotthard, Lukmanie and San Bernardino. Lavatetto in the Versasca Valley is about 20 miles north of Locarno. One of its attractions are the smooth rock formations, which are surprisingly suitable for sunbathing. A medieval bridge nearby spans the Versasca, which feeds a reservoir downstream. The mild climate and Mediterranean atmosphere are also enjoyed on the banks of Lago Maggiore in Ascona. Ascona too possesses a rather smart cable tram, taking visitors to magnificent vistas reaching deep into Italy. The design of the platform is striking, but perhaps problematic for those who have no head for heights. The Centre Valley Railway links Locarno with Domodossola at the south entrance of the Simplon Tunnel in Italy. The railway owes its name to the many side valleys that are bridged in spectacular fashion. Perched on the two hilltops above the 2,000-year-old city of Sion are the ruins of the Tourbillon fortress and the Valais fortress, with its church Notre-Dame de Valais. The nearby slopes facing south are well suited to wine growing, thanks to the mild climate. The canton of Valais is the largest producer of wine in Switzerland and home to well-known brands like Pinot Noir and Chasselas. In a sparsely populated valley south of Sion, the Grande Dixence dam seems to have halted just in time to spare a little chapel. A cable tram at Le Chargeur takes visitors to an unspoilt wandering area on the banks of Lac de Die Reservoir. Following the Rhone downstream leaves us to Villeneuve and Lake Geneva. Château de Chillon is a few miles to the north and one of many in the region to welcome those in love with castles. Mind you, not all of them are quite as picturesquely located on the waterfront. Westward along the shores past Montreux, we end up in Geneva. Did we mention that Swiss rivers often flow through a lake? The Rhone leaves Lake Geneva at Geneva. Well, most of it. The proximity of France is clearly reflected in the architecture. Geneva is best typified as a metropolis in miniature. The city is home to headquarters of international organizations like the Red Cross and the United Nations. From Geneva, we move up north to Gruyère, a fortified town on a hilltop guarded by the castle, once home to the Counts of Gruyère. This is the Mittelland, a Switzerland of rolling hills wedged between the Jura and the Alps, stretching from Lake Geneva to the Bodensee. Gruyère is not only a beautiful town, but it is also home to a famous brand of cheese. The castle now houses a museum dedicated to local history, culture and architecture. 19 counts called this castle their home from the 12th century to 1554. The last of them went broke and was forced to vacate the premises. Saint-Ouzan is a charming medieval town nestled in a Jura valley along the banks of the River Doubs. Its surroundings are ideal for cycling, long walks and canoeing. If you're into horses, Saint-Légier is the center of horse breeding in the Franche Montagne. It is the place to be during the annual Marche Concours, a large horse festival boasting a market, presentations, inspections and games. One of the highlights is the farmers' wagon race.
Ils sont partis comme des fusées, surtout avec l'équipage numéro 2 de Jérôme Boutet, qui s'est emparé tout de suite de la tête et de la corde. Toujours en tête de la course le char numéro 2 devant les tribunes. Il reste un peu plus d'un tour de piste à parcourir avec toujours en tête.
From the Col de Chasserelle, we overlook Lake Neuchâtel and the Mittelland all the way down to the Alps. The land surface of Switzerland is roughly divided into 1/6 Jura and 3rd Mittelland and the Interlaken is built on an isthmus separating Lake Brienz from Lake Thun. Hotels, a casino, railway connections and a nostalgic steam ferry make Interlaken the perfect place for day trips in the Berner Oberland. A cultural event is the open-air performance of Wilhelm Tell in a stadium. Legend has it that Wilhelm Tell refused to greet landlord Gessler, which led to the famous shooting incident. In a sense, the story is reminiscent of the Swiss rebellion against the Habsburg rulers and the subsequent oath ceremony of the 3 pioneer cantons of Uri, Unterwalden and Schwyz on August 1st, 1291. The date continues to be celebrated as a national holiday. The Swiss like to keep up their traditions. The Unspunnenfest in Interlaken resembles the Highland Games in some aspects. It is, however, held only once every 12 years.
Schynige Luis. Sieger Platz 4, Berner Oberland,
The Schynige Platte-Bahn begins in Wilderswil, close to Interlaken. During the 4-mile climb, passengers are seated on wooden benches, in couches ordered only a few years after the line opened in 1893. With Lake Thun in the background, the train proceeds towards Schynige Platte. The name refers to a rock formation glistening in a particular sunlight. A grand view of the highest peak surrounding the Jungfrau awaits visitors. Alternatively, visitors might want to spend some time in the Botanic Garden that opened its doors in 1929. By the end of the summer, farmers return to the valley with their cattle smartly decorated for the occasion, as seen here in Lenk. This event is referred to as Alpabzug. To this day, the paddle steamer Lötschberg maintains a ferry service between Interlaken and Brienz. This service already existed before the two towns were connected by rail. The working of the two-cylinder steam engine may be admired from the passenger deck. The captain still relays his commands to the operator in the engine room using a speaking tube. From the landing stage, it's only a short walk to the Brienz Rotonbahn, committed to steam traction since day one in 1892. In fact, in the 1990s, the Machine Works in Winterthur delivered 2 new steam locomotives with up-to-date technology. They are recognized by their faster exhaust beat. Following a 17-year pause, in 1931, the Rotonbahn made a comeback. Suddenly, the steam engines proved an asset because competition had embraced electricity. The trains only reach Rotenkulm in the summer. Many rail lines roam the area between Interlaken and Jungfrau. The Grutschabmuren is of particular note as a peculiar island enterprise. The area abounds in high waterfalls and deep crevices. Activities pumping the adrenaline are to be found in Fürst, a rejuvenated winter sports area connected by train and gondola cableway. Trains of the Wenger Alpbahn arrive at Kleiner Scheidegg from two directions. Here the final stage begins to the top of Europe. About 1 mile after departure, the Jungfraubahn dives into the tunnel, dug through the north face of the Eiger mountain. About 4 miles later, the tunnel ends in Jungfraujoch, Europe's highest station, at the beginning of Europe's biggest glacier, the Great Aletsch Glacier,